I'm Stephen Rae, Group Editor-in-Chief of Independent News and Media, based here in Dublin. We are the publishers of the two major daily newspapers on the island, and we also publish the two major Sunday newspapers on the island of Ireland. Our website, independent.ie, which you all need to go to for the best news on the summit, is independent.ie, which has an audience of 10 million unique users every month. I'm delighted to be joined here this morning for this debate on a new page for journalism by Matt McAllester, who is European editor of Newsweek, and we're thrilled he's here because I know you had a rush from the airport to get here, so delighted you're here, Matt.
My pleasure, thanks, Stephen.
And also Alexander Klopping, who is the founder of Blendle. I was congratulating Alexander outside on the hoodie, which has got a nice bit of product placement on it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I think, Matt, I'd like to start with you, because I know we've all been following the adventures of Newsweek, certainly on your various travails and how you've come back and forth. So I wonder, can you explain to us how Newsweek is approaching the whole print-online dilemma and how you're transitioning from print to online?
Well, we're transitioning, but we're not letting go of print. Every copy of the magazine that we sell and our circulation is going up, we make money on, and so you wouldn't want to throw that away. It's a key, and there are two key revenue streams there, obviously advertising and subscriptions. So that's a key part of our business model. But yeah, we're absolutely growing our traffic. We have what we're calling a soft paywall right now. The paywall comes down. You get 20. You have to input your email, and you get 20 free stories a month. But that includes the magazine, the kind of premium content, as well as the stories that we're putting out on an hourly, minutely basis. So we're doing both sort of the very curated high-end magazine play as well as the big traffic play as well.
Mm-hmm. Alexander, Blendle is something I hadn't heard of, but I know many of the audience probably have. But it's certainly a very interesting model, and I know Anya introduced it as the iTunes of news. Can you explain a little bit about Blendle, how you founded it, and what you're doing?
Sure. So I was a journalist before. About 3 years ago, we founded the company because we thought it's really strange that there is no single place where you can get all the journalism in the country and only have to pay per article instead of needing to get a subscription. And when you think of it, there's a trend going on in journalism where more and more journalism, starts going behind the paywall. And I don't know how often you enter these Wall Street Journal links or FT links, and it tells you to subscribe, and a lot of people don't really want to do that, and you leave again. And it's a real shame because we think that people are actually willing to pay, if they can pay 20 cents, 30 cents per article, and just pay for that with one click, and always can get their money back. That's also a thing that we can do. Then people are willing to spend a lot of money. That was our assumption.
Sure.
So we started doing this in Holland a year and a half ago now. And we're at 500,000 users right now. Very often they're very young, so more than half of our users are under 35, who have never paid for journalism in their lives before very often. And suddenly they're paying small amounts, but decent amounts of money that are additional for the ways that publishers currently make money. Mm-hmm. So we launched this in Holland a year and a half ago with all newspapers and magazines in Holland, so nationwide coverage. And we're doing the same thing in Germany now, and we launched a month and a half ago with all German newspapers and magazines.
Okay, and how do you think how are the traditional legacy publishers responding to this?
Now, in the beginning, they were kind of anxious, especially in Holland. I had to talk for a long time in their offices to get them on board and talk to a lot of people. But in the end, when people see the product that we've been building, that's the moment that we can convince them, because it's about the product. It's not really about the model. Like Blendle does micropayments, which is a model that's been talked about for a long, long time. But I think the truly important thing is the way it looks. Like we try to make every story looks like from the original publication. A story from Newsweek would be exactly in the font, would be exactly the right colors with the good photography. We want to give this premium feel, and at the same time we help you find content out of all the newspapers and the magazines that are interesting to you. Because there is a lot you're missing out on.
Sure.
There can be a great story in Vanity Fair or in your local hometown newspaper that you currently don't see. and you can hope that it will show up in your Facebook feed or in your Twitter feed, but it's too random. There's too much noise. So we're basically making everything accessible, saying, all right, you only need one account to pay for everything, pay per article, and we help you find the stuff that's interesting to you by looking at your social graph, looking at your interest fields, and we even have our own editors curating out of all the newspapers. They get up at 3 in the morning for
I
you.
suppose as an editor, and having witnessed the iTunes model, I suppose publishers would worry the blended model. Will it be like iTunes and support the big artists when the smart artists suffer?
I think it's both. Definitely the biggest publishers are making most money via Blendel right now. There are some big newspapers in Holland who are now already after a year and a half getting significant extra revenue, which is great. But it's also a way for smaller magazines that people don't normally read to give them more attention. It's easier to get to an article that is really interesting to you when it's around articles from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and a big German newspaper, for example, if you're in Germany.
Sure.
So it's also easier to find that stuff. So we're trying to, make it right.
I know, Matt, outside just before we came on, we were talking about ad blockers. And of course, ad blockers are the big dilemma now for all of us because lots of people are using them. And particularly on mobile, the whole revenue model is wrecked by ad blockers. How do you handle it in Newsweek, and how do you think publishers need to handle it?
Well, I think we'll be pushed by the technology. You can't uninvent something. I mean, you can have an arms race and try and block the ad blockers and circumvent them, but ultimately that's going to push us towards a payment model. And if one revenue stream on the spectrum kind of narrows a little bit, then you have to migrate to others. And I think, like all publishers, we're looking. Once upon a time, that was the spectrum, and now the spectrum is here. And so, I mean, Blendel sounds, very interesting to me because it sounds like if the FT and the Wall Street Journal are getting younger readers who would not subscribe to, would not pay, £400 a year, but would pay 50p for something good, then that's reaching a new audience. And for us, that would be very attractive.
Yeah.
Alexander, your view on ad blockers?
I think I was in a room with people a little bit below my age about a month ago with about 200 people, and I asked them who doesn't have an ad blocker installed. And there were literally 3 fingers up in the air, like the complete group. And now these people were technology minded, and this was pretty recently. But still, when a publisher would see such a site, he would be quite scared, especially when you think that, especially in the English-speaking world, it's a little bit different in the rest of Europe, but in the English-speaking world, so much of the money that publishers make comes out of ads. It's not diversified at all for so many newspapers and magazines, and that's a huge problem when ad blockers start rising this way. So in Europe, like in France and in Germany and in Holland, and it's more diversified income sources. People have been getting subscriptions for a way longer time in those countries. But you see the same thing happening now in the United States or in the English-speaking world, where there's more, this move to, we have the free stuff, which is the stuff that we do on the web, and the news and the quick stuff that people are not going to be willing to pay for. Because let's be honest, when there's a story on some stupid thing, I won't even go into it, but you're not willing to pay for that. But
Sure.
if you have this long, beautiful piece of long-form journalism that a journalist has spent weeks on with beautiful photography, if it's one click away and you pay 50 cents for that article, people are going to be willing to do that. So we have to build these different ways of, making sure that people pay for journalism, and also get young people in this mode where they're willing to pay for journalism.
Yes.
And when you think about it, if you would have asked about 10 years ago to someone my age, do you think you'll ever start paying for music in your life? They would have laughed at you. Like I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
The idea of, I've never bought a record or CD or whatever people were doing in the 90s in my life. And so I've not paid for journalism ever before until iTunes and Spotify.
Yeah.
So when a new distribution model like that comes along, it really can change the behavior of people when it's about ease of use and when the platform is nice and when the social graphics there. It happened for music, it happened for movies, and I'm very sure it can happen for journalism, but we need to have people understand that journalism, some journalism, is worth money,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
it needs to be easy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to solve.
And that's absolutely what we're trying to solve, all of us. And I think, Matt, I know at Independent News and Media we broke down the silos. We had 2 Sunday newspapers and 2 daily newspapers, and they're all market leaders, but we broke down the silos and moved them all into one newsroom, which is a platform-neutral newsroom serving our online operations. And I think it's worked quite successfully. But what we tried to do was inculcate a startup culture within the newsroom. And I know, speaking to you, that you say Newsweek has what you think is a startup culture.
It does. I mean, Newsweek used to be owned by the Washington Post company, which Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and then we were owned briefly by IAC and another very wealthy investor. Now we're owned by a tech startup news company, IBT Media. So, everyone there is young anyway, and it's a dynamic, environment where we can make decisions very quickly. And that's very liberating for a legacy brand, and it's an unusual situation. And I feel like Newsweek has been kind of unleashed on the world again, which is very fun for all of us to be involved in.
And how would you say the startup culture is? How do you create it? How do you nurture it? And how is it different to an actual startup?
I mean, I've never worked on an actual
You
startup,
do, man.
so
You
yeah,
do, yeah.
we'll be exchanging clothing tips. It's just about having ideas and about having those ideas approved, and the speed in which those ideas can be actualized. And that's, I mean, you must make decisions every day, 5 times a day, and not be afraid to fail. But I think that a lot of big news organizations are afraid to fail, and they have reason to be afraid because they've seen their revenue models chipped away, and so they have like big, deep, in-depth investigations about where we should go. Whereas I think in a startup environment, you just you have a meeting and you decide and you have ideas and you move on. And Newsweek, for all of its history, has taken on that DNA, and that's what makes it kind of a fun place to work right now.
I can also imagine it gets harder when you're such a big brand like that. Obviously, it's harder to make mistakes. It made me think of a thing that we came up with on a Friday afternoon at some point, is that we decided that if people bought an article, they could always refund the article with 1 click. So at the end of the article, it shows you a little link saying, I did not like the article, I want my money back.
Yeah, I would welcome that, because I mean, one of the things Newsweek's always done is when we make mistakes, we run corrections. It's kind of like an inbuilt part of any, respectful news organization's DNA, and that's a kind of like, actually, no, we don't even like that, which I think that would be great.
I'm happy that you would. But in the beginning, I was when my co-founder suggested this on a Friday afternoon after drinking a couple of beers. I have to be honest. I thought he became crazy, honestly, because I thought, everyone's going to ask for their money back. This is a stupid idea. Publishers are never going to do this. Although you're apparently much freer than I consider most Dutch publishers. But we just did this anyway, and we noticed that people were starting to try to ask for their money back in massive throes in the beginning. But then afterwards, it came down a lot, and right now it's only 5%. But the amount of people that actually buy articles is much higher because we do the refund thing. Now, this could have been very easily gone wrong, and it would have looked really, really bad if everyone would have asked for their money back instantly. We just tried, and it works now. And now this is the thing that people, when they talk about Blendle, this is the thing that they're talking about. So we need to make more mistakes now, maybe now even more than in the beginning, and it should be part of the culture, I guess.
I think certainly I'm of the age, Matt, that I would, grew up with the long-form evolution of the story with Newsweek. And obviously, long-form is something we all look to depend on, and we think there is a future in long-form. But how do you think you can make long-form, how can you continue that revenue stream out of long-form journalism?
It really is the golden age of long-form. It's weird. We went through this like existential crisis, and where's journalism going? And suddenly there's The Atavist, there's Epic, there's like all these startups, but also legacy brands are investing hugely. One thing we're looking at is movie and TVs. When you look back in the last two movie and TV shows, last two, I mean, this is a bit of a crude measure, last two batches of Oscar nominees for Best Movie, more than half of them are fact-based, whether it's Stephen Hawking or Alan Turing, and last year the most successful movie in the world was American Sniper. Again, this is not, you know, a superhero movie or a franchise toy movie. This is stuff that people really care about. So even in, you know, in a way, the most sort of commercial market in the world, which is Hollywood, there's a real hunger for fact-based stories, and stories are just these primal things that people need. They want to find out what happens in the next page. They want to find out what happens in the next minute in the movie. I mean, it's also the golden age of TV. I'm watching Narcos on Netflix. It's fascinating, and it's not, you know, it messes with the truth, but fundamentally, it's based on journalism. And so, if there is this market there, and it's really a commercial one, then, you know, we would be dumb not to be looking at that, and we absolutely are.
Well, I think you've nailed it, actually. I think long form, yeah, that's one thing, but I think what people desire and what audience consumption is all about is storytelling, and that's what I tell our young journalists all the time. You know, the future is storytelling, and I think in particular in Ireland, you know, we have that culture of storytelling, and I think that'll secure our future to some extent. But I think, Alexander, you know, speaking earlier, you were talking about clickbait, and, you know, you give people money back if they're not happy with the article they've consumed. How does that work?
So this is one of the, when we got publishers on board, they said, all right, so you're going to ask for money per article. What that's going to do is that people are only going to click on the stories that, you know, are about sex or about, you know, other stuff that people on the internet are clicking on. People will only read that stuff, and when suddenly the measurement of what the income is for a publisher is on a per article basis, then journalists are going to be, there's going to be this incentive even more than it is now to do more clickbait stories, basically. And one of the interesting things that happened after we imposed the refund option was that people are asking for their money back in massive troves when a journalist does clickbait. So, for example, there are some gossip magazines that we have in the Dutch and German versions of Blendel, and people ask for their money back sometimes up to 50, 60, 70%.
Really?
So you earn a lot of money in the beginning, but then everyone asks for their money back again. So in that way, clickbait doesn't work. So it's this built-in system that we try to prevent that. Basically, in the top 10 list is actually the long-form stories. It's the storytelling that you're talking about, and it's, you know, this list of deep analysis of the stuff that you have to spend, you know, 10 minutes or 20 minutes even reading. And it's exactly the kind of stuff that you never see in trending lists anymore on the internet.
This time last year I got killed for running overtime, so I'm not going to do it this year. But Matt, you know, we all have to get out of the daily grind because, you know, we need to come up with the big ideas, and that means pulling ourselves out of the office and going away and just coming up with the ideas. How do you do that in Newsweek?
Me personally, or as a team? I mean, we were just talking about being. Alexander was stuck on a plane for 5 hours yesterday, and we were talking about going to the symphony and having ideas, because hard to have ideas when you're so plugged in, you're being bombarded. So I go running, cycling.
And I know, Alexander, you go to the concert hall.
I said I should do that. It's the only place that I can think of that doesn't allow a cell phone anymore.
It's all good in theory.
Yeah, no, but I need to go to the concert hall more with, I think, a little notebook or something, and then spend more time thinking. That should be good.
Well, look, that was a hugely interesting debate. I think there was a lot of ideas out there, and certainly the Blendel model is something that will have aroused a lot of interest. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.